Terrence Vance Gilliam was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1940. He started his career in advertising in Panorama City, LA. As a long-haired 20-year-old growing up in the 1960s, Terry Gilliam moved to the UK to pursue his dream career as an animator. He began by animating sequences for the children's series Do Not Adjust Your Set, and found himself moving on to work as an animator, director, and actor with the Monty Python cast. He helped animate and co-direct several of the Monty Pythons that you might have seen, such as The Holy Grail, Life of Brian, and the television series Flying Circus. In 1981, Gilliam moved into focusing on building up experience afar from his Monty Python group, crafting his first trilogy, the Trilogy of the Imagination, featuring Time Bandits 1981, Brazil 1985, and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen in 1988. This series became the foundation for Terry's auteurship, as it explores his most constant theme of the imagination. The three movies focus on the struggles of the awkwardly ordered society we live in, and how each try and escape its harshness through the imagination. In the 90s, he directed a trilogy of Americana, The Fisher King in 1991, 12 Monkeys in 1995, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 1998. This trilogy remains surrealist like most of Gilliam's work. Though Brazil, Time Bandits, and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen are the only ones considered as part of his Imagination trilogy, Terry Gilliam provokes questioning of the tactility in the juxtaposition of dream and reality of every film he has sunken his hands into. This British-American auteur has many stylistic tendencies, all which are relative to dreams and the imagination. Yet the more prominent tropes such as magic realism, hallucinative camera motifs, and cartoon cutout animations stand out the most as Gilliam-esque. An ism that shares similar qualities to surrealism, such as its tendency to distort the appearance of matter, magic realism casts an outlandish shadow in the realistic mise-en-scène that leaves the viewers bewildered and dazed. Terry Gilliam bridges fantasy and reality, formulating a balanced mixture of verite and absurdity in his virtual world. A Gilliam protagonist is often on a journey of crossing from fantastical and dreamlike state into the real and hope-shattering world, but cannot commit to only one state of being. This causes the character to feel disoriented, thus ultimately driving them towards their own destruction. In The Fisher King, Perry tries to engage with New Yorker lifestyle while being haunted by the Red Knight, his medieval nightmare. The Red Knight, a figment of Perry's imagination, is the very thing that keeps him in his own mental purgatory, blocking him from wholly connecting with reality, pursuing a relationship with the woman he loves. The falsehood of the protagonist's reality is blended with true reality and causes him to feel conflicted on choosing one side, dream or real life, and therefore driving him to have a mental breakdown. Magic realism becomes a tool that Terry Gilliam uses to explore the functionality of dreams. Gilliam's character confuses the magical illusion and figments of his imagination, such as the Red Knight, with his own true reality, much like one's imagination tends to blend sound truth and our desires. Another common trope appearing in Gilliam's work is his hallucinative camera motifs. The audience is encouraged to experience imaginative encounters through the jaunting movements of the cameras and the peculiar angles in which he shoots his scenes. Whilst almost every scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas beautifully incorporates all of Terry's signature camera techniques, the Hotel on Acid scene is brimmed with an array of his well-known camera motifs, such as the fisheye lens, the canted angles, and the close-ups. These particular shots disorient the audience as though they were to stoop down to the main character's level. These cinematic motifs mimic the hallucinogenic sensation that run through Raoul and Dr. Gonzo's mind. Terry Gilliam invites the audience to sink into a surreal perspective of the mind by embodying the stages of the imagination and hallucinative state through the psychedelic and radical camera motifs. This surrealist auteur uses these drug-psychotic camera tactics to reveal to the viewer that the world is not always as it is presented by the media or other people. There are so many ways that the imagination could interpret to be sound truth or as reality that it would be absurd to define it from one clean-cut perspective. Gilliam's philosophy is that the world is as each mind is capable of perceiving it. Lastly, Terry tends to take old pictures from historical archives and old photo albums, making those cutouts new again by conjoining them with his mystical and surrealist animations. His unusual animative style could be interpreted as the way that dreams morph reality with our desires. The brain's way of processing its memories and knowledge is through the 8 hours of sleep the average person gets each night. so it replays our daily experiences except in a distorted perspective. Gilliam recreates that dream process through his quirky cutout animations, combining lithographs with expressive colors and vivid drawings. Terry Gilliam is not the only auteur that has been open to revealing the obscurity of their imagination through their cinematic productions, as David Cronenberg is equally renowned for his obscure visuals and plot. In David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, Lee finds it difficult to separate reality from his dreams due to heavy drug intakes. Cronenberg justifies the obscurity of his content as purely crafted from his dreams and his imagination, and that his critics would not be too quick to judge if he were to display the very activity that went on in their minds, as there would be perhaps some equally disturbing pictures displayed from the critics' imagination as well. Terry Gilliam and David Cronenberg are consistently faithful to unhinge the filter of their imagination while broadcasting for the whole world to see. Their movies are the gateway between reality and the imagination. Terry Gilliam, from the distorted angles to the obscure characters, bridges the gap between reality and fantasy. He frequently makes use of magic realism to display the immersive relationship of subconscious desires and reality. He concludes that one cannot simply acknowledge one perspective and call it the only real representation of the world, but that it is up to the imagination to interpret what the world is to them. Gilliam reanimates this through his distorted and differing angles and camera movements. He furthermore branches reality to dream through his inclusion of medieval imagery and iconography with the artistry of his imagination. It was his turning his dreams into reality into a form of cinematic performance that Gilliam was able to press his own unique mark on the filmmaking community. The imagination proven by Gilliam is much more powerful than credit is given to it by society.